Hello, so part 3. Hopefully we can get the rest of these words down. Thank you all for your patience, and I hope that you're learning a lot. Remember, if you have any questions, what's great about videos is that you can just press pause, you can record back again, you can go and if you want to hear something I said again, you can just press pause and you can just replay the video. So feel free to do any of that. And also, if you have any questions that you feel like I'm not really addressing, or even if you think I'm getting something wrong, feel free to email me. And I'm always open to try to help you out in any way I can. So let's go ahead and talk about Yahweh. Yahweh is the name for the Hebrew God. It comes from the verb to be. You get this idea that God is calling himself or herself, I am that I am. It comes from like this verb to be, this concept that, you know, God exists. You see this with Moses. So Yahweh, the name for the Hebrew God. The Sabbath. The Sabbath is on Saturday, and it is the Hebrew day of worship and of rest. Christians and other religions also have Sabbaths, but just for this particular context, think of the Sabbath as being a day in which you would kind of reflect upon your religious beliefs, where you would probably go to a worship service. For the Hebrews, that day is on Saturday. So let's talk about these different, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next page for this. Let's talk about the Pharisees and some of these different sects of Judaism. They're very, very interesting. So let's talk about, I'm probably going to mispronounce this name. Dr. Rife, if you're watching this, I'm really sorry. But let's talk about Mishnah. So Mishnah, it refers to the oral tradition of orally keeping laws. So at this point, I've brought up a page here for you all, and I think this page is actually super informative. You can see here that I've highlighted what this is. I would encourage you to pause the video and to type this in to your own, to your own Google search. So what you can do is you can look it up and you can see that the Mishnah is the oral law as it is known to the end of the 2nd century. The Pharisees are pretty big fans of keeping this oral law. You know, oral tradition is a big part of Hebrew culture because not everyone can read and write. Most of the Pharisees probably could, but they just like this idea of having this oral law keeping, this oral tradition, so to speak, with their laws. It's kind of like they make. Have you ever gone through for an English class and maybe you're annotating or you're writing notes beside something that you're reading? That's kind of, if you think about it, that's what this is. Something similar, where religious leaders are kind of adding on notes, but just verbally to what they're referring to. It's oral, not changing of the laws, but oral notes to laws, oral annotations to different laws. So the Pharisees are big on that. Let's make a few notes about who the Pharisees are. For the most part, they're probably pretty wealthy. They help lead the temple activities, so they're big leaders in the Jewish community. They do believe in the afterlife. They believe that bad things sometimes happen to good people. What else do they do? And just as we referred to before, they're kind of on board with this idea of Mishnah. So I think that's most of it here. Oh, yes, they butt heads with the Sadducees, which we will talk about a little later. They and the Sadducees don't get along very much. So the Essenes. The Essenes are what you would refer to as a separatist group. They have removed themselves from society and have went to make their own community in the wilderness. because they think that there is corruption with the Pharisees and Sadducees and other Jewish leaders. So they decide that they want to go off and just make their own group, and they often do that by leaving the community and by almost like the Amish, they kind of are living separately from other people in the time. They have their own community with their own beliefs, and so that's why they're really interesting. To my knowledge, I think they were actually killed out by the Romans, which is unfortunate. But you get this finding in 1947 of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls consist of an Essene library of documents. Some documents are simple, everyday things, like shopping lists, for example. Things that just kind of give us an eye into what is happening in their everyday life in this Essene community. But what we also get are these ancient biblical documents, some very, very old biblical scrolls. So that's why that's important. It happens, those findings occur in Qumran, which is near the Dead Sea, which is why they're called Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's the town in which these documents were found. Okay, so let's talk about the Sadducees a bit. The Sadducees, if you think about the Pharisees, they're kind of the exact opposites. They're also probably pretty wealthy. They also help lead the temple. They may have less people than the Pharisees. The Pharisees are pretty numerous. But the Sadducees don't believe in a set afterlife. They're more concerned with the modern life. You find them oftentimes concerned politically. Sometimes certain of them would try to negotiate. I misspelled this. Negotiate with Roman leaders, which made other Jewish people upset. Because Jewish people, are it's kind of like this idea of fraternizing with the enemy. Why are you talking to these Roman leaders who, have us under their control? So, not all of them would, but you get this idea where they're kind of typically a little bit more friendly with trying to work things out with the Romans, because they are wealthy and they don't necessarily want as much of a fuss. Okay? They believe that bad things happen to bad people, aka you are being punished for sin. So if they met someone who was poor on the side of the road, or if they met someone who was sick, they would say, well, God is obviously punishing you for something you've done wrong. They wouldn't think that bad things could happen to good people necessarily. They would think that if you were suffering, that you had brought that on yourself somehow by sinning or doing something wrong. So in that way, it's kind of what we may consider a more judgmental attitude that they had. And they definitely butted heads with the Pharisees. Okay, so now let's talk about the Zealots. The Zealots have this fourth philosophy that we talk about. It is this idea that they're very nationalistic, aka they want control over the land that they think God has given them. So they want Romans out. They want the Romans out. They want other leaders out. They want their independence. That's who the Zealots are. They have a lot of rebellions because they want their land back. So they're all about having independence and independence as a country. And the Messiah